When you approach the challenge, there are a couple of things that you might like to take into account. And the main one is that you're not building this community for yourself only. So think about your own biases and how you might be able to sort of work them in or out of the challenge of building this new community. And you also need to think about what are the broad range of needs that exist across the entire community so that you can respond to those. There are a lot of advantages to being able to develop a community from scratch. So you can figure out what's gone wrong in previous community developments, and you can make sure that those things don't happen again. So you can learn from past mistakes and past successes. You can also sort of manage to hopefully meet the needs of that community. So you can forecast what those needs are, and you can get ahead of those needs and thinking about what they are and bringing in infrastructure and buildings and services and things ahead of time, hopefully. And the other exciting thing is that communities evolve over time. So even though there might be people who move in early and there'll be challenges for them in, isolation and safety and access to services and open space and things like that. But as new people move in, they'll be able to make connections, and communities grow on connections. In fact, they thrive on connections. So once the community starts to grow and it builds those connections from people, person to person, from family to family, from street to street, community to community, then we end up with these really thriving, flourishing, healthy, and really exciting communities. So in some of the communities that I've sort of helped to build from scratch, we have people who are doing environmental projects in their community. We have people who are doing projects in community languages, who are working on health-related projects, who are getting out and starting new community groups, sporting groups, arts groups, music groups, book groups from scratch. So all of those things that are exciting and already established in the existing communities will happen in those new communities, but it does just take time. At Hume, we have a number of policies that guide how we work. So we have a Pathways to Sustainability framework, which guides the work that we do from an environmental perspective. We have a Social Justice Charter as well, which guides things that we do from a social perspective. And we have a Health and Wellbeing Plan, which guides how we approach helping our communities to develop in positive and really healthy ways. So these documents cover things like working with First Nations people. They cover things like responding to the climate emergency. They cover things like making sure that we've got programs that respond to the community's mental and physical health needs. So all of these things are really important in building a community, in building sustainable communities, in building thriving communities, in building communities that can live within the limits of what the earth can sustain. In building communities that create connections, social connections, so that neighbours can help neighbours and people in one street can help people in another street. So it's the strength of the environment and the social and the health and wellbeing combined, which really will have an impact on how these communities grow. At Hume, we have a number of documents that help to guide how we respond to developing communities with sustainable development in mind. Firstly, we have our Pathways to Sustainability framework, which sets out the environmental approach. So things like climate, things like waste, things like working with the natural environment. Then we have our Social Justice Charter, which really focuses on the rights of people and bringing in issues of equity and justice to our decision making. And thirdly, we have a Health and Wellbeing Plan, which focuses on providing those things that are really crucial to supporting people's mental and physical health and wellbeing. So when you combine all of these things, we are really responding to the sustainable development goals that you've been learning about. We're building healthy communities, we're building environmentally safe and friendly communities, we're building thriving and flourishing communities where connections are made, where communities and people grow now and over time into the future. Hume is a really culturally diverse and culturally rich community. We've got people who've made their home in Hume, who've come from all corners of the globe, who speak hundreds and hundreds of languages and who express, the cultures from the countries that they've come from every day. So it's a really exciting place for people to live, and it's a really exciting place for people to get to know each other, to build their lives and bring up their families. At Hume City Council, we have a number of programs that respond to gender equity, that respond to reconciliation with our First Nations people, that support people in the LGBTQIA+ community, and that broadly celebrates that culturally rich and culturally diverse community that we all have grown to know and love. So some other things that you might consider when you're starting to think about the challenge are what information is available to you already. There's plenty of information online, and you can go to the Hume City Council website, which is hume.vic.gov.au. You could also have a look at the website of the Growth Areas Alliance, which is all of the municipalities like Hume who have these challenges every day. There's information there that you might want to take a look at. You could also go to, some of the other departmental websites, environment, land, water and planning, or education, or health, or infrastructure, because those websites have documents with a lot of information for you, which will give you the context of building communities, and you'll be able to sort of get your head around how big a scale this challenge is. But then you'll be able to bring it down into focusing on Hume itself. And when you get to the Hume website, you might look at things like the Reconciliation Action Plan, or the Pathways to Sustainability Framework, or the Social Justice Charter, or the Health and Wellbeing Plan, because that'll give you the local context about how Hume goes about or approaches building these new communities. You might also just observe. I mean, it's a huge challenge. So the first thing you probably need to do is just take a deep breath and then think about, what are the things that I really like about my community? Go for a walk in your community, take some photos, make some notes, and then come home and reflect. Have a chat with your friends, your family, ask them what are the things that are really important about living in a well-connected, environmentally friendly and strong, thriving community. So Hume is situated in an area called the Victorian Volcanic Plains. So that extends sort of somewhere roughly from the sort of northwest of Melbourne right across to the South Australian border. And in, many, many years ago, these plains were flat grasslands with small grasses that you might have seen, kangaroo grass or wallaby grass, and hundreds of other very small plants that you might miss when you're walking around the grasslands if you don't know what you're looking for, essentially. Sometimes there are trees there, but they're very sparse, and so they're called grassy woodlands. And there's sort of the next iteration is a woodland. So it's not a forest, it is a grassland in the sort of literal sense that you will be walking through grass. And these are really, they're key to First Nations people who lived in the areas many thousands of years ago. They, gathered food from the grasslands, and at the moment they exist in sort of what we call remnant form. They're nationally, that is Australian nationally significant. Some of them hold really threatened species of where there's only sort of a very small number of species left in situ on the ground. So they're really important from an ecological point of view, but they're also important from, sort of more of a spiritual connection, that connection to nature. And if you have the opportunity to go out and walk in the grasslands, you'll know what I mean. But you've got to look down, because all of the good stuff is down around your feet. In Hume and across all of the local government sector, there are heaps of opportunities for people who are studying in the STEM area and who want to ultimately work in the STEM area. We employ, it feels like sometimes thousands of engineers of all varieties who work on civil projects, who work on traffic, design, road projects. We employ people in the environment sector, so we have people who are ecologists and botanists, people who have technical skills and experience in climate and renewable energy projects, in integrated water projects, managing stormwater retention or recycled water, building recycled water pipelines, for instance. In our libraries, we run technology programs for the community. So we employ people who have got skills in app development, for instance. So if you're thinking about a career in STEM, think about local government, because we do employ a lot of people and there is a lot of really wonderful opportunities for you there. Some other STEM areas that are relevant to the local government context. There's a whole lot of health jobs, people who work in maternal and child health, people who are nurses or trained aged care providers. We also have an entire suite of sort of data analysts and researchers who, survey people and mash up the data and spit it out at the other end so that it's useful for planning and decision making.